Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Sandy Bottom Homestead. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It is a nice day here in coastal North Carolina. We're talking maybe it was 32 last night, and then today it's supposed to be maybe 60, so we're having pretty good weather. And I want to talk about the plants that we're planting this time of year, in particular cool weather crops, and how cold can they actually get. That's what we want to know, right? That's like the secret sauce, is how cold can these crops actually get before they die. As it stands right now, we have 6 weeks, roughly 6 to 8 weeks until our last frost date, and all of our garden is planted except for this bed, and the plants are actually hardening off for it. So we have plenty to talk about. There is a lot of plants in here that have been here, and you've seen them over the winter, that have been here all winter, and they've needed some sort of protection. So we'll get into, I'm gonna go over each plant that I have, and then I'll tell you at what point I would think about protecting them. But we need to understand this first and foremost. The hardiness of the plant is based on exactly how established it is at the time of planting and the time that the cold hits. So you can't just put out a small plant and be like, okay, it's good. We're going, it's going to get to 28 degrees. It's going to make it. That's not how it works. But we'll get into all that here in just a millisecond. Like these cabbages right here that we planted out, they're finally starting to take off. They've been in the ground about 2 weeks roughly at the time of filming this video. And you can see we just had 32 degrees. I think we've gotten down to 28 and we haven't covered them at all. But the key is to get them out and get them hardened off appropriately and get them in the ground at the right times. We're gonna hear more about this in a coming video soon, but monitoring your weather is super, super important for this, because you gotta remember, like in my garden and on my homestead, I'm trying to kind of always try to bend the rules a little bit and see what I can get away with. And I get a lot of success and I get some failures too. And one thing is, you've got to monitor your weather and make sure that you're getting a period of time in which this plant can actually get comfortable. So as you get closer to spring, you're going to get warmer and warmer days that are going to allow for that to happen. And when I say warmer days, I mean warmer nights too. So you'll start to get those more and more and more. But you've already done a hardening off process, which I've done a video for, and I'll link it at the end, all about hardening off and how I do it. But this is a really key part, because what you're doing in that process is not only are you getting used to the sun and the outside elements, but you're getting it used to the temperature swings. So at some point, you want to protect them and get them a little bit cooler and a little bit cooler. And then what I do is I look for a time frame in which there's going to be warmer nights. And when I say warmer, we're hoping around freezing-ish roughly. A little bit of cover helps too. So at any point through this conversation, if you're thinking, well, I don't know if I can get warmer, just insert cover and raise by minimum a degree or two, and then you can kind of start to see how that works. And keeping the frost off of the plant is more important than keeping it warm. So the cover will keep the frost off of the plant, and then the temperature will recover as the sun comes up. So what we did with these is we had a stretch where we hardened them off, and then we had a couple days where it wasn't getting below freezing for the night, and then we went back below freezing. But it was enough time for them to get comfortable, get going, and get them in the ground, and then they were able to go. So at this point, cabbages that are small like this, I would say once they've gotten in the ground and they're comfortable, I would say roughly about 28 degrees. Now these bigger ones back here, they have gotten to 16 degrees, and I just threw a cloth over them and no big change at all, no burn or anything. So you can see there's a difference in what I would do and what I would recommend. So even though you can plant stuff when it's colder, you don't want to necessarily stick it in the ground when it's cold. And as a small plant, the older it gets, the more established it gets, the more roots it gets, the better off it is. Looking in the same bed, we'll talk about this kale here. Now this kale has been in here all winter, and it did get a little stunted, but it's starting to really take off now. But this has easily gone 16 degrees, no cover whatsoever, never been burned or anything. That's one of the hardiest plants I put in my garden, hands down. So I just keep it going, no issues whatsoever. Luckily I haven't had a lot of pest pressure this year. So kale is really easy to get going. So again, established plants, 16 degrees, no issues. If you were to talk about like a smaller plant, I think I would stick across the 28 degree range. But you don't want it to get straight to 28 degrees, because if you do, you might smoke your plants. So think about covering them if you're getting ready to plant out or something, and just timing that weather. So we need to talk about these onions here, because onions are one of the plants that are like a big mystery, it seems like, and it's just unbelievable what they can take. Question time. What is the vegetable that you grow in your garden that has gotten the coldest temperature and survived and gotten a harvest off of? Let us know in the comments below. We've all made the mistake and let things get colder than they should have. I did cover these when it got 16 degrees, and I may not have had to, but I wanted just to be safe. But I mean, they're doing fine and they're really growing now. They're getting more sun and it's getting warmer. So, you know, keeping them hardened off at the same point is good, but there's a trick to onions that can really help you. Because they're so hardy, you can actually, like, for instance, I use my greenhouse sometimes, but you could put like a load, like let's say you have a bed and you want to start onions and you wanted to do onion seeds and it was time to kind of get them going, warming up a little bit. You can start your onions outside under the low tunnel and they will germinate, and then you can just plant them right in the ground. I don't ever really recommend planting them, starting seed, like direct sowing them. It's never really worked out for me, but that doesn't mean it can't work for you. But it just kind of seems to work that way. So they're so hardy that you can do that. And if you're doing that and you're starting them under cover, then you can just kind of keep them going. Make sure you vent them during the day and stuff like that. But it really does help. And that's why, you know, we'll leave our hoops up here. I mean, you can see I finally got all of my plastic put away. I can pull it out, but we still leave our hoops up for right now, just because we want to make sure that if we need to, we can cover. And I'm not worried about covering onions anymore. They're not going to be covered at all. But they can get really, really cold. Just make sure you're not shocking them when you get them outside if you start them inside. But I do most of my onion starts outside. I think this year we started like 2,000 onion starts and maybe 1,800 of them were outside. So we did a small amount inside during the coldest part of winter just to make sure we had some to sell, but other than that, we just kind of do them all outside and it works great. Here's our broccoli bed here, and we started our broccoli really early this year, and I actually planted it a lot earlier than normal. I wanted to see what it would do, and actually we planted it and then it got cold. And I was a little worried about it, but we did not get any damage whatsoever. Now the key is, because of when I hardened it off for a long time, very slowly, and really, you know, when it got cold, I would give it taste of the cold for a little bit. So I think I did about a 10-day harden off period on this because I wanted to get them out. But what that translated to is, once I hardened them off, I got them in the ground. We had about 2 days roughly where it wasn't very cold at night, and then it got to like 28, 27, 26 degrees, something like that, and they pulled through just fine. Now, typically broccoli is a more hardier plant until it gets ahead. I was never going to eat this, and I just left it to see what it would do. But yeah, see how it got burnt, but the rest of the plant did just fine. Now I actually did cover it up with, when I topped off my soil, so I can't show you that part. But the head is actually what got burnt more than anything else. Crazy, the leaves look good, but the head looked like crap. And then that just kind of started the downward process. And the problem with broccoli is, I mean, yeah, you can eat side shoots, but look, nobody grows it just for side shoots. You want that main head of broccoli. And so you're missing that main head at that point. But this right here, I've grown broccoli all winter, and I've had them again get to 19 degrees maybe is a number I'd be comfortable with, and I would cover them there, but down to like 25, 24 degrees. As long as it was established, I didn't have a major issue with it. So just keep that in mind as you're getting ready to plant your broccoli. I do want to say that all of this is based off of Yes, there's some research involved in it, but a lot of it is based on my experience and what I've experienced in my garden. And you have to remember that during the days we will get warmer, but at nights we will get cold. So you have to match your climate versus weather, to what you're growing and how you're doing it. And if you're having a warm spell, but then you're going to drop down to like 15 degrees, and maybe it's just not quite time for you to plant unprotected or start a seed unprotected. So just think about that as you move forward in your gardening this year. But a little bit of cover goes the longest way possible and can make or break your garden.